Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. NASCAR Shriners Children 500 at Phoenix Raceway, and we're counting down to the Grid Ranking Endurance Performance Index. Joe Samaniego here, and with me, Tanner Smith from PitboxPress.com. A big thank you to our investors from Patreon, Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network each and every month, helping us stay on the air. Plus, anyone buy me a coffee or YouTube super chat, well, thank you on the air. Jason M leads the leaderboard with 5 super chats. Buy me a coffee, and we have plenty to talk about with what was a very exciting race, Tanner. I think a lot of folks, I don't know if it's just something about the fact that Phoenix now has a championship race and not Homestead. People just seems to like give this track a hard time, but I think this was a really good race. And for Christopher Bell, he's going to be talking about this because he did it. Christopher Bell, first driver of the next gen era to win 3 consecutive races. And it's very impressive what he's done. Atlanta, a drafting track. Granted, we had that late caution. Who knows what could have happened, but he put himself in the lead. Circus of America, a hard, clean battle with Kyle Busch. I think after this weekend, everyone could agree that was a clean battle between him, Kyle Busch, and all of them for the race win. And now, dominated, survived a 2-lap shootout, was just unstoppable, especially with those soft tires. And we got to remember, he's now racing dirt again. He got permission from Joe Gibbs Racing to go race dirt, something Kyle Larson has always enjoyed. Is Christopher Bell now at a level we have not seen him before?
Absolutely. Christopher Bell obviously started his Cup Series career with Levine Family Racing in 2020, where he kind of had a building year where it was essentially like a tutorial about how to be, a competitive Cup Series driver. He had a few solid runs in that car. I think specifically that fall Texas race where he ended up third after we finished the race on Wednesday due to heavy mist. Yeah, good times. But I think it's important to remember with Reddick, Cole Custer, John Hunter Nemechek to an extent, and Bell himself, that all 3 of these drivers, Chase Briscoe as well, came into the sport at a very volatile time to be a young driver. And what I mean by that is, after the 4th race of the 2020 season, which was Bell, Nemechek, Custer, and Reddick's first seasons full-time in the Cup Series, they didn't have practice or qualifying for much of the next 2 years. So they lost a ton of on-track time. They lost a ton of testing time. And even when they were still in the Gen 6 car, they still, obviously were doing a lot more testing geared more towards the Gen 7, the next gen that we have now. So, obviously coming into this season, I said that Christopher Bell would be a massive contender. And I think that we're just seeing him close out the races last year that he wasn't able to for one reason or another. And, he's had top 5s at Atlanta before. He has performed very well at COTA before. In fact, last year, had they gone another lap, he had a major tire advantage over William Byron. There is a possibility he could have been able to make a pass on that final lap, but he settled for second that day. And it just seems like with the return of his dirt racing, he's converting at the highest level he's ever converted before in his 6th season. And we've obviously seen him make it all the way through the playoffs into the championship round twice and competed at Phoenix for a title. And at this point in the season, it's looking very, very much like it's the Christopher Bell show this season. And he's already making a very heavy mark on the championship race. Through 4 races, he has 16 playoff points. That is absurd. Most guys go through the whole season and can't even get 1. So, Christopher Bell is definitely at a level we haven't seen him at in the Cup Series before, and you can credit it to a lot of things, but I just think his 4th year in this kind of car, fourth year with like full practice and qualifying behind him, a lot of simulator time, and just obviously more track time with the dirt stuff. I think all of it is finally coalescing into a vibrant and brilliant campaign that looks to be ahead of Christopher Bell and the 20 team.
The last few times when Christopher Bell has made the championship 4, I've always felt for me it was sort of a surprise because it was okay. I had like the Larsons, Logano's on the even years, Hamlins, Bell. Okay, great, you made it. I'm convinced this is looking like a Christopher Bell we have not seen in those years. And if he was good enough to get to the championship 4, oh my goodness, if he could keep this up, I think he could go on a run similar to Kyle Larson and get in the most wins, like 10 wins or something, if he keeps this up. Granted, the season's young. That team, everyone could talk about what happened in Daytona. That, well, what if? That would have been crazy if he had gotten Daytona 500. We talk about 4 wins in a row this early in the year. He is just on a level that I have not seen from him before. Really, I think we haven't seen from the 20 team in quite some time. Matt Kenseth, really, when he
Yeah.
team and was just looking unbeatable. It would be great to see him.
There was that 2013 season that Kenseth had as soon as he jumped on board at JGR, and he performed very well, had 7 wins if memory serves, and then he had a great 2015 as well prior to his run-ins with Joey Logano that ultimately did not end well for either of them. So yeah, we'll have to see how the rest of this campaign shakes out. I mean, we have 32 more races, but if we're going by what we've already seen, Christopher Bell might win the next he might end up winning 27 of 36 if he continues at the rate that he's at.
Yeah, at this rate, already when you look at what he did last year in 2024, Christopher Bell had 3 wins total. Well, he just tied that, so he's going to have, once again, at least 3 wins, maybe more, if he continues at his pace. When you look at some of the championship drivers from last year, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, and Tyler Reddick, all of them only had 3 wins last year. So he's tied them. The only drivers that have more wins was Joey Logano with 4 wins, which more people will credit his championship on the timing of those wins rather than a full season. And Kyle Larson with 6 wins. He's halfway there, and we're only 4 races in. So he looks like a contender. Do you think he is a lock for the regular season championship and championship 4? Would it be a bust if he doesn't get either one of those?
It's so hard to say with it being so early in the season. With how well they've performed, it seems pretty likely that he could in fact make it 4 in a row. If you remember last season in the fall race, he clearly had the best car all day. I'm not sure exactly if he swept the stages, but he definitely took home one of the stage victories and was in position of the cars that were on his strategy to win the race by several seconds. But Joey Logano and his teammate were able to keep the 22 out front long enough to win that race. But even then, you go back to 2023, Bell almost won that race in the fall as well. So it almost seems like Christopher Bell is due at Las Vegas. And, obviously, as far as his championship aspirations are concerned, I don't think wins are really indicative at any point in the regular season of if you'll make it to the championship round. But you've definitely got to pin him as like a very strong favorite to make it at this point and to win the regular season points battle, because he's not only winning these races and, taking all these playoff points, but he's also finishing up towards the top. He's gaining stage points in practically every stage. He's up front all the time. So, yeah, had Daytona played out a little differently, I mean, we could be looking at Christopher Bell having a tyrannical run to the title by hoarding all the championships and all the trophies that come with it. So, yeah, I wouldn't say it's a lock for the regular season championship at this point. There's still a lot of racing left to go. 22 more races until we get to Daytona here in the fall, but right now he's definitely looking like the early favorite to win this title. So we'll have to see how JGR and their team can, continue to capitalize on this momentum, because we haven't seen a guy in the next gen era have this kind of a start to the season.
First, to have this kind of start, I'm pretty excited to see the potential Christopher Bell could show if he keeps this up, because I think unless they have an absolute disastrous summer and they're just getting DNFs, and we see a driver like Kyle Larson step it up and get 3 wins, 4 wins during the summer, it's getting harder and harder for them to surpass, to get 3 more wins. If Christopher Bell gets that 4th win, I think he would be a lock for the regular season championship, unless he has a disastrous remaining regular season. It's just really impressive, because even in our prediction shows, we were talking about, okay, the closest of the competition, where were the Toyotas, where were the Chevrolets and the Fords, and we also agreed Toyota seemed to be the best car, well-rounded, and today, Christopher Bell up towards the front. I know towards the end of the race, we had Denny Hamlin.
Tyler Reddick spent some time up there, but he had power steering issues. Ty Gibbs had somehow cycled all the way back to the top 10 by the end of the race before he had a brake rotor failure, much like Bubba Wallace. Yep. Toyota had all hands on deck. I mean, they even had the legacy cars up in the top 10 for a significant portion of the race. John Hunter Nemechek was threatening to have his 3rd top 10 of the season already. So, yeah. It's definitely looked really good for Toyota over these first 4 races. Obviously, we'll have to see how they continue to capitalize on, any of the data that Bell and Adam Stevens have been able to generate for them. But definitely a really strong start for Toyota. And yeah, it's been a completely unconscionable start for any team in this next gen era to go out and win 3 straight races at any point in the season, but to do it in the first 4 with such varying layouts for tracks is just super impressive.
It's super impressive. I mean, that's the thing. And he's doing it today. If that last caution didn't come out, I would easily have said he just dominated this race. But he had to survive that late restart. And I thought for a while it looked like Denny was going to steal one, but he managed to get it. So that was his 3rd in a row. That duel with Kyle Busch, William Byron last race weekend, that was really showing what he could do. Atlanta, well, not just the way it is at these drafting tracks lately, that to the point where Fox has to show the caution lights in case they show up, because they have for the first part of the year, but thankfully they haven't. Hopefully they won't at Las Vegas next weekend. Las Vegas Motor Speedway. The last time we were here, Christopher Bell finished 2nd behind Joey Logano, which, of course, we know how that all went with Logano going to the championship 4. Bell was super upset. He felt that could have been a difference between making the championship 4 and not making it.
And it was.
Pretty much. It was the difference. So he has 2 second-place finishes at this track, 3 poles, and, of course, carrying the momentum. What I really like in his, after he gets out of the car, he is just super confident. I mean, even when he won on land, he's like, I love super speedway racing. And he's just enthusiastic each time. Do you believe it will happen? And this is for everyone in the chat room. We want to hear your comments as well. Christopher Bell, for the first time since 2007, when Jimmie Johnson did for 4 points races, not counting Kyle Larson did 4 in a row, but that's included the All-Star race. Will he make 4 in a row? Are you confident enough to make him your pick-a-winner for next weekend?
No, I'm not confident enough to label him as my pick-a-winner, but He would be the first driver since 1992, when Bill Elliott won 4 of the first 5 races, to obviously win 4 of the first 5 races. And I'm not gonna lie, he should definitely enter the Las Vegas race weekend as the favorite for all of the betting apps. Toyota has routinely had supreme strength at the intermediate tracks. We saw that back in 22, 23, and even parts of last year prior to the midway point of the season, where unfortunately it just seemed like the Joe Gibbs Toyotas started to lag back a little bit in terms of their intermediate prowess. But at the end of the day, Christopher Bell has had so many stupendous runs at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Obviously, as you mentioned, 2 back-to-back runner-up finishes in the last 2 fall races, as well as 3 poles, which is just insane in itself. But yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards picking Christopher Bell for this coming week, but I'm more of a person that likes to see cars hit the track and practice and things like that to make sure that the car that I pick has speed. But like I said, Bell's got to be everybody's like early favorite coming into this weekend. So until I see cars at the track, I'm not going to like place my I'm not going to place my marker on him, but he's definitely shown very strong pace at that track before, and you'd be silly to not say he's, in the running even before they hit the track.
I recall when we were on the air Thursday, me, you, and Jackson, Bell then was the favorite on DraftKings. We had qualifying, then William Byron became the favorite. And it's like, well, he did get essentially the pole. I could see that. But I think unless Christopher Bell just qualifies outside the top 25, just has a disappointing, comes out no speed, he has to be one of the favorites without a doubt. Now, I don't think I'm going to pick him for my pick winner just yet. I will want to see how everything develops. And of course, we have the disadvantage. We'll be on the air again Thursday again, and we're playing pick a winner. But of course, in the rules, you could change it up until the green flag drops. So plenty of time in case. But let's see what happens this week, because anything can happen. We just know the momentum is right there. It just takes any factor from one of the other 30-some drivers could go out there getting a win. Wrong place, wrong time. I mean, we've got to remember Christopher Bell was a victim of the Bubba Wallace Kyle Larson crash that occurred ahead of him, and he had nowhere to go. That could have been another good finish in Las Vegas. So one of the favorites, but it's just going to be a matter of seeing what happens with practice and qualifying before I think he could be the absolute favorite. If he qualifies on pole, I think everyone's in trouble, and you got to be mainly hoping for craziness and bad luck for Bell to not get that win at Vegas. Besides Bell, this race gave us plenty to talk about. Overall, good racing, including the option tire. We saw drivers utilize this to go from the back to the front, and it was spectacular. Ryan Preece on stage 1, it just looked like nothing from him going from started what I believe 28th and just work his way to the front, top 3 position. What an effort. Joey Logano got that penalty crossing below the yellow line before the start finish line. He got on the soft tires, worked his way towards the front compared to in the rest of stage 1, where he was on the primary tire like everybody else. He was hardly making ground. But then we saw some of the issues. McDowell blew a tire. I bet you Goodyear is probably going to be looking into it, concerned like making sure did they make the air pressure too low and that caused it to go down, or a defect with the tire. We didn't see a whole lot of defect tire issues like in years past, which I think Goodyear will be happy about. We did see, of course, later on Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs, but it appears those might be brake rotors that blew up, which we've seen that at Gateway as well, too. So assuming NASCAR and Goodyear feel like, okay, this was successful, this could be the tire compound for the championship race next time we come to Phoenix. Temperatures will be about the same, the 78 to 80 degree range. Do you agree with the move of a softer tire compound for everybody in November? Or keep it as an option tire like what we had at Phoenix today?
I think the rational thing to do would be to have an additional testing session probably sometime this week just to see exactly how many laps you can run the current option tire until it obviously shatters, basically. Joey Logano went, I want to say, around 70 laps on his set of tires, and he still managed to bring it home second in that stage after being passed with about 8 laps to go by Christopher Bell in stage 2. So I definitely think that the tire has a lot more life to it if you take care of it. And with that in mind, I don't see a problem using this tire for the championship race as it currently stands. That race was exceptional. Any run that they had on the option tire where most of the front of the field had to take it was very gripping action. You still saw cars that were a little bit more tailored toward a short run have more short-term speed and get the most out of those tires for the first 20 laps. And then you still had drivers like Ryan Blaney, who his car didn't seem to take off very well, especially on restarts. It didn't really help that he didn't really have a great day on pit road, but it just seemed like his car was tailored more for the 15 to 60 lap runs that we're accustomed to seeing at Phoenix, and he was still able to pick his way through the field similarly to how he usually does. So I don't think the option tire made too much of a like competitive difference, like in terms of the tires like overall life. I think that McDowell's problems were something more to do with how the car was set up, considering he had an additional issue with that same exact tire later on in the race. And I believe the second time it was a primary that had a problem. So it wasn't even like all of the option tires, blistering and blowing up too early. No, I just think it was a setup problem for the 71, considering they had a second failure with a different tire compound. So I think that this tire definitely passes the sniff test to this point. I think that conservatively speaking, they should probably do an additional test here before it gets too hot in the Phoenix area. But at the end of the day, if I was forced to make a decision today, I would absolutely be totally fine with moving this option tire into the championship race. And I don't think that the championship race should have an option tire. I think that the red that we had today should be the primary and only option we have for the title race, because as much as I enjoy the option tire and having that as like some form of a strategy variance, I still don't think that we need to gimmick up the championship race if we're going to make it a one race championship. To me, we've already gimmicked up this point system and how we race way too much. So I think adding another tangible strategic element to the race would not make the product any better and would more so serve to throw the audience off and give them something else to keep their eye on when they should be trying to focus on the race for the title rather than, oh, well, which car has which set of tires on. So yeah, I'm in favor of this option tire being the primary for November, but please, whatever you do, do not make it an option tire race in November. Nobody wants to see that.
Originally, I was thinking I would prefer to see the option in November originally. But then I think Jackson on Thursday said something. It was along the lines of, we seem to throw this sort to make the competition a little bit more better on the track, but not so much to improve the strategy element. And I felt that really came true, especially that third stage, that second from last caution that got William Byron out because he was just making his pit stop when Bubba Wallace hit the wall. That would have been a good round of green flag pit stops. See drivers like Ty Dillon, who still had two fresh option tires, through his own mistake on pit road, took himself out of contention when everybody else was down to one set of good option tires or scuffed option tires. But we did see that point where almost everybody was on the option tire. And it's like, okay, you're just putting everybody in the box. You're not having that strategic element compared to if we didn't have the stages, if we had green flag pit stops. So thinking more about it, I have changed my mind where it's like, okay, we're going to have a softer tire. Let's see how much longer until you have to pit. But you're talking about tire wear. If we're talking the same temperature range, we have a good idea under race conditions what they're doing. If it's a little hotter, okay, tire wear could be a little bit higher. That could make the show a little bit more spicy. And I think it's a good move by what Goodyear did and NASCAR to bring the two tire compounds, because at least everyone's talking about what the option tire did to the racing product, which, especially for Ryan Preece, that team, just to fly up there, and then even Logano, because after the penalty, Logano was just slowly working his way towards the front. He gets on the option tires and he is just flying up to the front afterwards. So I think this was a good win for them. Let's get to the championship race. And again, just put it all on. Okay, go out there. We're not going to throw another element of what is with an option tire, but just everyone's on softer tires. Now you got to be mindful because tire wear could be a bigger impact. And you might have a run where you're going to be trying to take care of those tires, and you might have somebody with newer tires coming towards the front. Could be an interesting dynamic we haven't seen in quite a few years at Phoenix. One of the things I was surprised by, that 11 car pileup. I know the way the restart occurs, we've seen crashes of people getting too close to that wall, getting hooked into the wall. I believe we saw that in the ARCA race, where a driver got clipped as they were going towards dogleg, hit the inside wall. This one, yeah, it was something else. This one, 11 cars, and it took out some drivers that we talked about that could have used a good day. Cole Custer, well, you and Jackson are right. He was not going to finish in the top 20. Shane Van Gisbergen, well, you were correct. He was not going to finish well, but neither did Riley Herbst.
For that.
Riley Herbst also took it out. Chase Briscoe, that car got up in the air after making contact with the tire of Justin Haley. I have not seen that at a track like here before.
Justin Haley's tires have been the foil for Joe Gibbs racing cars all season, haven't they?
Yeah, stay away from Justin Haley. You're going to go airborne if you're a Joe Gibbs car.
Yeah, literally. And then you obviously had Brad Keselowski as well getting involved in that, unfortunately.
Yeah, Brad Keselowski, only one finish in the top 15. That was at COTA, and of course we knew he had that heating issue where he then had to go to the infield medical center. But 3 finishes out of the top 25. Inspired 2 out of 3 cars. And just earlier, the prior caution, Michael McDowell with that tire issue. So
the caution that set the restart up.
So all 3 of them in a short span went from all 3 in the top 10 to all 3 with significant damage. The only saving grace, Michael McDowell got the Xfinity fastest lap again. So, of course, you follow us on Blue Sky. You saw we shared a clip of Zach from the Gay Racing Podcast. Every time Michael McDowell gets the Xfinity fastest lap, I think that's going to be a new tradition.
I swear to you, I think McDowell saw that video and has taken it personally at this point.
He probably has. It's pretty funny just the thought it happened right after the Daytona 500. He almost got it, I think, in Atlanta or another race. He might be just, hey, if we can't win, let's just go for the fastest lap. Because you think about it, now he has 2 bonus points. That's 2 positions.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the only car on your lap and the only car that, like you can't, be passed, you may as well just come put 4 stickers on it and, time it out to where you're the car that you're the only one taking the track, and you have just, clean air, yeah, throw a set of those options on it. Let's go get a point. Like, if you're not going to lose any points in the process, you may as well.
Exactly. I mean, throwing them on. That's why I was surprised. I thought like NASCAR would do something like you have to be in the top 10 or you have to be on the lead lap to be eligible, but it just seems like anybody. So as long as your car is in good shape, you could get it. And he did that. We got a comment in the chat room. Want to throw this question out to you. Does any NASCAR driver know the art of give and take while passing? Plus, I see one drivers next week taking off Bell to cool his jets.
I mean, I certainly hope not. You never want to see somebody just take somebody out, but yeah, I think I saw a good amount of give and take today, to be honest with you. It's just that, I don't know, when you're within 20, 30 laps to go, you're not letting anybody pass you. At least I wouldn't. Like, if I felt like I had a car capable of winning and somebody was putting pressure on me from behind, like, why would I just give the position up? That doesn't make any sense. But, like, I even remarked to my wife during the race, I was like, wow, Kyle Larson actually just gave Ryan Blaney that position. I feel like I never say that about Kyle Larson. He usually races people pretty hard, which, I can respect. But yeah, like, I definitely think some of the early 30s guys and, up, they know what give and take is. It's just they don't always follow it to the letter of the law. But I do think it's a way for some of these like older drivers to kind of, give these younger drivers a lesson on how things used to be, and how drivers used to treat each other. And I think you're definitely starting to see some of the like younger crop coming up. Like, they're not like bulldozing each other over as often as you would see like 5 to 10 years ago in the lower series. So I'm hoping that we're working our way back towards that like show of respect amongst the drivers, but at the same time, you still see stuff like what happened in the Xfinity race and how there wasn't any instigation prior to that to have caused the driver to just send another guy Deuteronomy deep into the wall. But it is what it is. So, yeah, at the same time as I say that there has been some instances of give and take, you do see, unfortunately, some things that kind of take your appreciation of those kind of moments away when, the race for the finish is still so fraught with disgraceful behavior, I guess, at times. Granted, last week at COTA with the Cup Series, like, we saw a really great and mostly clean finish, but then you see stuff like what happened yesterday, and you're like, ugh, God, that we don't want races ending like that. At least I don't. So, yeah, I would like to see more drivers on the Cup field give and take, but at appropriate times. An appropriate time is not 20 to go.
I feel what Christopher Bell said after his win at COTA. He said he feels like he races everyone with respect and he has a high level of respect. And I feel that's very true compared to some drivers. They would not. If Ross Chastain was going for 4 in a row, I think that would be a very different story of give and take. I could see Denny Hamlin, several others, to being like, no, I'm going to take extra room away from you. I don't think there's going to be a driver out there that's willing to say, I'm going to be that person that's going to wreck Christopher Bell if he's going for 4 in a row. I think you don't want to be remembered as, well, Bell was on his way to 4 in a row, and then this driver just wiped him clean out. I mean, you wouldn't. I mean, I get it. A win is a win, but I think after what we saw happen to Austin Dillon and the public opinion and perception of him, how it has tanked essentially, I don't think you want to be doing that as a driver, especially when people will want to see Christopher Bell win it. I know the competitors don't want to see him win it. They want to be the winners, but I don't think they're going to be willing to do anything that crazy to lose respect among fans and potentially their driver other colleague drivers. And speaking about give and take, this was sort of what I was leading to our big 11 car pileup. Ty Gibbs was coming up and it was 4 wide. I get it, it's hard racing, and there's no track limits here. We see them go cut through the dog leg, turn 3 and 4. They go into the apron, come out as there's the pit wall approaching them. The Fox broadcast, everyone talks about like it's a big feature. Oh, you get to see them go 4, 5 wide. It looks great on TV, but then you have an issue like this. Maybe it's just me. I prefer the old Phoenix layout where we didn't have the dog leg being cut through all the time when we had grass. Do you think the restarts, the no track limits at Phoenix, is that becoming an issue here at Phoenix, or do you think this is just an issue NASCAR should just leave it as is and not really look into changing?
To borrow from the old colloquial phrase, this is a feature, not a bug. They definitely paved this racetrack to make it as hectic looking as possible. And, I can't lie, watching some of these restarts is pretty compelling at times, seeing drivers drive all the way down to like the inside wall to try to get as much, try to cut as much distance off the lap as they can. And yeah, it's definitely a bit strange watching the drivers obviously try to funnel in at the exit of turn 2. And that's obviously why we had this like massive collision that we had. But at the end of the day, like if it's paved at an oval track, I don't really see too much of an issue with the restarts. I mean, I think it looks kind of silly. You obviously paint the apron line on the racetrack and, it's supposed to, deter drivers from going down there. But at Phoenix, everything is, on limits. So I don't see a problem necessarily with how Phoenix legislates the racetrack, but I would like to point to that early restart where Joey Logano was assessed that very, very, very ticky-tack penalty for obviously going below the apron like inches before the finish line. And here's my thing. We have black and white rules for stuff like this where I don't feel like Joey Logano gained 20 to 30 seconds of an advantage over William Byron by being inches below the line before the start finish line. He maybe gained like a couple hundredths of a second by taking a slightly shorter line around the racetrack compared to William Byron on the outside. But the penalty for that tiny, minute, almost worthless infraction was a pass-through penalty. And I think that's ridiculous. Like, I get why we have a restart violation penalty. And like later in a race, if a driver has already violated it once, I totally understand levying a pass-through penalty. But like, I feel like this is where the shades of gray in the NASCAR rulebook need to be placed, where instead of like a right hook, which I think should have been a black and white rule, and I mentioned that in our pre-race discussion this week, I think that this is the kind of rule where like a shade of gray could be painted in, because on like lap 15, making a guy serve a pass through for being off by like 2 inches that didn't even really give him like a visible advantage over his competition just seems really overt and really silly. I think this could have been a situation where if the rules were written a bit more gray, I couldn't come up with a better word, but if there could have been a bit more of a gray area here, you could have been like 22. This is a formal warning from the officials. Hey, you went under the yellow line before you got to the finish line, so clean it up next time. And like, I think doing that once for each driver for when they commit the penalty would be fine. And then if they repeat the infraction, then it's a pass through. Like you've flagrantly bypassed the warning and done it again. But on lap 15 to give a guy a pass-through penalty for not gaining any reasonable advantage just seems painfully stupid, to be honest with you. I hate to be that blunt about it, but like when you really look at the penalty for what the infraction was, and when you consider that, you know, for a separate thing last year, a restart violation should have been called and didn't, it just seems over excessive. So yeah, that I guess that's where I stand on this. That track limits at Phoenix, like that's kind of the feature of the track. I don't really mind it, but when you're penalizing guys for not really gaining an advantage, it just seems really silly.
That was something when the Fox broadcast. I disagree when Kevin Harvick said, "Oh, you have to call, or every driver's going to go below." And I was thinking, Joey Logano had part of the car. It's not like he blatantly just dove right under. I would have been totally fine if NASCAR had just been like formal warning, like you said, and then probably when the next caution did came out, just hey, we gave one person a final formal warning. This is just a reminder: cross that line before you get a penalty, because it didn't gain him much at all, if anything. And I was just sort of stunned because okay, this is a track, like you said, it become a feature. The 4 or 5 wide, every restart. Look at them, they're 4 wide, the Fox broadcast will say, and then in the case of the 11 car pileup, it leads to a crash. I just feel it's like I get it the way the facility's laid out now. You have the big grandstands on what used to be the old turn 1, turn 2. Move the start finish line there. I just wish, why didn't they move the pit road a little closer, sort of like what you have in Martinsville, where it's a little bit more closer to the track, where that weird space where it has the O'Reilly sponsorship or whoever's sponsoring. It's like a paved trioval with concrete walls there. I don't understand it, but that's just me. I
don't understand anything about this reconfiguration. I don't know what about it makes the track better or worse. I just think it was to do something different. And I'm not going to lie, I have a lot of nostalgia for that old layout with the that wonderful camera they used to have, like at the very bottom of the flag stand, that would, you know, as the car wins the race, like, you know, it was a really great shot of the start finish line. And now we have the big cactus, which is really cool, but it's definitely not what we used to have, and I'm not sure that what we have now is better than what was. So yeah, it's definitely a little bittersweet, but you know, we're not the architects, we're not the engineers that, you know, make these racetracks and make these reconfigurations. So I hope that there was a great and valid reason for them to just pave over a bunch of space that they weren't going to use.
Yeah, at least we're not using the traction compound, no PJ1 or that resin, none of that. Just go out there, race, give them softer tires, the tire wear. Potentially should be a good show. Again, one driver, again, it was looking good for a while, but just nothing to show. Ty Gibbs, he just barely finished in the top 25. He finished 25th essentially, so he just got in there. Last year, he finished 5th at Las Vegas, the next race, for the springtime. But then come playoffs, 30th. And of course, we talked about on Thursday how he's just been on this horrible streak of just lousy finish. Well, I hate to bring the news, but that 5th place finish Ty Gibbs got last year in Las Vegas, that's his only finish he's had at Las Vegas in the top 20. I know we said Thursday it's not a situation of we're going to go in there, change up the crew chief because he got the new crew chief. We're not going to change the driver, obviously. But are we getting to the point where if Ty Gibbs does not get a finish in the top 20 next weekend at Las Vegas, a mile and a half oval, where we know this is the majority of the schedule, does it get to that point where Joe Gibbs has to be like, What's going on?
So I went back to last year's spring race here for Ty Gibbs. He finished third, and today he was not a factor at all. I'd be a bit concerned. I personally am very concerned because Ty has done well at this track before. He obviously got a top 5 last spring. He, has performed well here in the past and at tracks similar to it. And yeah, that's two. I mean, obviously today was a mechanical failure, but like he was never part of the main drivers up at the front. I did mention earlier he had kind of wheeled his way back into the top 10 there for a bit, and he looked on pace to have a solid like top 15 run had his brake rotor not failed, but that's just not how it happens. And sometimes when you're having a bad day, well, it rains, and then sometimes it continues to pour. And that's what's happening here. For Gibbs, I mentioned it in our pre-race show on Thursday last week that a lot of this, to me, has to do with him having a rookie crew chief and them kind of ironing everything out. And, my wonderful co-host Jackson Todd did mention that, his 100th start is coming up. So that's still something to monitor. And we haven't seen any of these teams tackle a true intermediate track yet because Atlanta is the same length, but it's not run the same. So it'll be interesting to see how the 54 team bounces back from that race. But I'm going to be honest, if they can't put a top 10 run together next week, I'm probably going to start screaming. I'm going to start sounding the alarms because that these are tracks that Ty has statistically performed well at in the past. And I think even you mentioned he had a great run last spring in Vegas. And if he can't put it together before the end of this month, you got to start looking at your Xfinity crew chiefs to see who might be able to come up and maybe fill in or, I don't know, offer some sort of expertise or something, because the cars that Tyler Allen is shipping out there for Ty Gibbs are clearly not handling the way he'd like them to or driving the way he'd like to. So I don't know. Something's got to shake over there soon, whether it's shaking up into good results or shaking up the lineup over there. So it'll be interesting to see how JGR proceeds, but first 4 races not look good. You've got one team that has won practically every race or has been in contention to win every race, and then you have somebody in the basement who has hardly finished any of the races. So yeah, quite the dichotomy right now going on at JGR.
With Ty Gibbs, it's getting to that point where I know it's so easy to say, oh, we're early in the season. Well, the next race weekend is the 5th race of the year. After Vegas, we're now at the 6th race of the year. That gives you just 20 race weekends. And 20 may seem like a big number, but let's be honest, there's still some, I call them the sleeping giants waiting to get a win. Kyle Larson, we know he's going to get a win.
Ryan
You
Blaney.
got Ryan Blaney, the Penske drivers. Fellow Joe Gibbs driver, Denny Hamlin, he could have gotten that win today. You're going to have the surprise winners at Talladega. I don't think you want to leave one of your teammates to be in a situation where, well, hopefully you do good at Talladega. We don't want that. It's just, I really will be starting to think, if I was Joe Gibbs, like, okay, are we missing something in this 54 team? Is it the chemistry between the crew chief and the driver that we need to work on? Is there just something about the car that is just, maybe we adjusted that is just not working? Now, granted, some of it is bad luck. Ty Gibbs has not been in the right place at the right time, but qualifying has not been his friend either. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with Ty Gibbs, that team, because before you know it, we're going to be in the summer stretch. A couple of comments in the chat room. Track limits at the dogleg at Phoenix. I personally wouldn't mind that, but I think, as you said, Tanner, it might be more of a feature of the track because it does visually look good in pictures and video. And then, go ahead.
All I was gonna say is that, like, just for restarts or just in general, because I have a solution if you just want to not use that section of the track, and it's plant some seeds to grow grass.
Yeah, grass would be nice there. Get some natural track limits. Also, I think
Even.
SVG needs Bruce Slicker back in his corner while he left, but I don't know. SVG's new crew chief is not understanding SVG as much as Bruce did. Shane Van Gisbergen, it's interesting because he is, after all, very familiar with the road course as Shane Van Gisbergen. We know he's potential to win, but I would be honest to say I expected a little bit more from Coda. I thought he would be a lot more dominant since it was a track we hadn't seen. We know how it works there. You don't win the stages. You go out there and you try to get the track position, but it just seemed like that third stage was like, where was he? SVG at the ovals. I mean, you said on Thursday you thought he was going to be towards the back. He was towards the back towards the end of that first stage.
I didn't think it'd be like that. I didn't think it would end up like that, unfortunately, but that is what we were saddled with, it seems.
Yeah, ended towards the back. Not a good effort. I think he's really banking on a road course, maybe a super speedway win. One team, I'm curious if maybe they start to feel like they don't need to bank on the super speedway of Talladega and Daytona. The Wood Brothers Racing Team qualifying the top 5, 4th place finish today. Josh Berry was up front just about all day. Of course, the cycles with the pit stops, the option tires, but he looked really good out there. Similar to Atlanta until he made some move on the last lap, which is like, that's not going to work. It didn't crash and has another finish outside the top 25. Daytona, that's a wild card. You either win or you wreck. And Coda, I think in Josh Berry and road course are not exactly like Shane Van Gisbergen and road course, to put it that way.
He's not even Ricky Stenhouse at the road courses.
But now Wood Brothers, Josh Berry, their first finish in the top 20, and it's a top 5 finish. We know what they have with Penske Alliance. Can this team be a contender in the mile and a halves?
Probably not immediately. I think next week we'll see. And, this is obviously a track in Las Vegas where Josh got his second career Xfinity Series victory when he was subbing for Michael Annett in the one pilot car for Junior Motorsports back in 2022. So it's not like, or 21, sorry. I got my years mixed up. But either way, like, Barry has performed well at this track in the past, and, Penske obviously came into last season and contended pretty well at Vegas and ultimately won the fall race with Joey Logano on that pit strategy call, while Ryan Blaney was poised to have a good run and unfortunately got into that major mix-up there at the start of stage 2 with Brad Keselowski and Tyler Reddick's flip and things of that nature. But I think that we're going to see the Fords, the better ones, such as Blaney, Logano, maybe Cindric, perform pretty well, but I just don't see Barry having a strong enough run there at Vegas to get anything more than like a top 15. But if he does perform well, then I think the sky's the limit with this team outside of road courses. He showed a lot of speed at Atlanta. He showed a lot of speed this weekend at Phoenix, which I don't know if it was on this show or if it was on the Gay Racing podcast, but I did mention coming into this year that having the data for both Logano and Blaney, having data to look over for championship caliber drivers is only going to help make Josh Berry a better driver. And it seems that those fruits are already ripe for plucking at this point. So it's nice to see the 21 car really start to perform and have some consistent level of excellence in that program. I know that they've kind of struggled since the departure of Ryan Blaney for Team Penske back in 2018. Didn't get a win for 7 years until last summer, but I think that they could have a much shorter gap between victories if they can keep this kind of performance up. So I would be very surprised this weekend if they're anything better than a top 15 car coming into Las Vegas. But if they come out of here or come out of the Sin City with a top 10 and solid stage points, I think you could pencil them into the playoffs at that point. They've obviously got the speed at these flatter tracks, and that first round of the playoffs would be shaping up quite well for that Wood Brothers car. I'll tell you that.
I feel one of the things with the Wood Brothers, they find drivers that are coming in, rookies, and they could do great, like Ryan Blaney, who got them good finishes, got his first win there. Or they could be nothing really. I mean, Harrison Burton, we know how he got his wins. A win is a win. That's great. Or they get drivers that seem to be like a Paul Menard, somebody that's okay, they got the experience, or Ricky Rudd.
Got some funding.
They bring the funding, but they just are missing that level to get in the victory lane. I feel Josh Berry is a driver that has potential. Still, he has the talent. I was wondering what would happen with him and Rodney Shows being split up, but I mean, if he didn't make that odd move on the last lap of Atlanta, that would have been another top 10 finish for sure, rather than outside the top 20 in a wrecked car. If he could keep it together, just not make mistakes, if they come out with a top 10 finish, qualifying the top 15, I would say they have a decent chance. They have the Penske equipment. I mean, for a while, he was the lead Penske driver after Logano got that penalty today. So there's potential there, but I think they just have to be perfect. The pits crew has to be good. Josh Berry, especially running up front more frequently, has to do it. One track I think Berry has to feel pretty good about, Bristol. We remember how he did last year until the tires started to fall off in that crazy race where tires were falling off quickly if you weren't careful. We'll see what happens. A lot of potential for that 21. Speaking about potential in the chat room, encourage everyone watching, participating in the chat room. Denver, Adelaide 500, Kyle Larson, rumors of him participating. Now, of course, the NASCAR Cup Series season, that finishes at Phoenix November 2nd. And November 30th, 26th through the 30th, is the Adelaide 500. I would love to see Kyle Larson. I mean, no doubt, I think everyone would like to see it, but especially the way Christopher Bell's running, we know Bell and Larson battle each other for the Chili Bowl quite often. I gotta say, I would like to see Christopher Bell go up there too, race down there. Him and Kyle Larson, well, Adelaide, those two racing against each other, that could be a lot of fun. Toyota is coming to the Supercar Series. Maybe that could be something in the future. Christopher Bell, a lot of potential. I think for a lot of folks, he was a shining moment this weekend. As we close out today's show, Tanner, what was your shining moment?
So mine actually is not going to be from any racing that happened this weekend. I'm actually going for a bit more of a niche selection here. So let me set the stage for you all. So Ruben Garcia Jr. in the NASCAR Mexico Series is the 5-time defending champion of that series that was established in the mid-2000s. And unfortunately, NASCAR and their major social media channels don't really cover that, the Brazil Series, the Pinty's Canada Series, or the Wheel and Euro Series very well, unfortunately. But I'm trying to do more this season to keep up with them myself. And last weekend's race in San Luis ended in exceptional fashion. And I recommend everybody that listened to this today and throughout the rest of the week to go check it out yourselves. But with 2 laps to go, the race came down to Garcia and Xavi Razo. And coming into the final corner, Razo got in the back of Garcia, and then everything escalated. Razo's right front wheel ended up on the deck lid of Garcia's car, and somehow Garcia was able to drive both of them to the finish line with 7 wheels. So it was easily one of the craziest motorsports finishes I have ever seen. And the fact that it didn't flood NASCAR's social media channels immediately is a crime. So that's my shining moment of the week, too. Ruben Garcia Jr. and Xavi Razo of the NASCAR Mexico Series. Hats off to both those gentlemen, and I'm looking forward to trying to catch as many NASCAR Mexico races this year that I can.
NASCAR Mexico, great racing product, especially their truck series. It is something to watch. I encourage everyone you can find it, especially streaming it on the internet, YouTube. Don't miss out. My shining moment, I mean, sort of glad you went with NASCAR Mexico because I think it's pretty hard to beat what Christopher Bell did. 3rd consecutive win. He just looks so confident when he's talking to post-race interviews. He is excited. He keeps asking Bob Pockers, please don't pick me for your race winner because we know that curse. He has to feel really good. I think he is motivated after Martinsville to go out there, get a championship. It'll be really interesting to see. On our YouTube chat, we did post there a poll question. Will Christopher Bell win at Las Vegas next weekend? 62% of the vote is so far saying yes, he will. 38% saying no. We'll find out next weekend. Of course, subscribe to the Grid Network right here. Tomorrow, Grid Encore, Ben and Brandon. Assuming Brandon is able to see what happens with the basketball team. They'll be talking about the weekend on Phoenix. I know they got plenty to talk about from that Xfinity Series race. The Xfinity Series, that finish left a lot of people talking about it. I know, as Denver says, Xfinity Series is like a mental institution, especially in a smaller oval. It's like, wait till tune in tomorrow. I think Ben and Brandon will have plenty to say about that. Then we'll
may have a special guest.
May I have a special guest as well? Wednesday, Grid Tonight, Kobe, Josh, and Matt will be on the air. The latest news to recap. Thursday, we'll be back on the air. NASCAR preview Las Vegas. Then Saturday, first F1 pre-race show because Formula One's back at Melbourne. Very excited. We encourage everyone to subscribe. Find our roundtable episode from yesterday. Tanner and the F1 team did a wonderful job. Encourage everyone to do that. And also, we want to give a big special shout out to Jackson Todd. He accepted a big job opportunity in the Chicago area. So, Jackson, we're going to miss you, but thank you for everything you've done for us for the Grid Network. So proud of you. And if you haven't seen the lightning round with him, Tanner, and me, that was a lot of fun. Some of the hate came true from that day, but definitely we're going to be just thrilled. Keep in touch, and thank you again. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and our investors, Colin, the show, Mark, David, Matthew, for investing in us, helping our team out. And, of course, all our super chats, YouTube, and Buy Me a Coffee. For Tanner, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time.